Alright guys, so for this video we're going to be doing a tutorial walkthrough of how to get the bubble effect with a pattern in book folding. I will insert a picture of what I'm talking about here. So in order to get that effect, this is going to be a fold also known as a 180 multi-layer combi fold. So to quickly break down what that means, it means that the outwardmost layer of our book fold is going to have a 180 fold. It means that there are going to be multiple layers to our book fold. And it also means that one of the layers is going to involve what's called a combi pattern, meaning that it is a combination of both folded and cut in order to get the desired effect. So if you're unfamiliar with what some of these terms are, I highly suggest checking out some of the other videos on my channel to kind of help get you familiar. But this video specifically is going to be both a real-time and sped up version of exactly how to do this. I'm going to film every step of this with you guys, and we're going to work through one of these together so that way you guys can do this straight from this video. So to quickly go over the tools that you guys are going to need, or that I'm going to be using for today's video, we're going to start with a pattern that has the bubble effect. You are going to need, obviously, a book that is going to match at least the dimensions within your book. That means your book needs to be as tall as your pattern, and it means that your total page count is going to need to also correspond with your book. Now, because this is going to be a combi style pattern, meaning that it's, again, both cut and folded in order to create the effect, I tend to trim out any excess pages within my book. It's just the look that I prefer, so I try to find a book that doesn't have a lot of extra pages compared to my pattern. So just a little tip and trick there. Some other tools that you're going to need are going to be a pencil to mark your pattern, obviously something to cut with. I'm going to be using the craft knife and cutting mat as opposed to scissors. Maybe I'll demo the scissors as well, but if you're a scissor type of cutter, scissors are just fine. And then some other helpful tools that we're going to be using today are going to be some scoring guides. If you're somebody who uses a binder slide to get your 180 folds, that's fine as well. But the guides are going to be more helpful when it comes to the multi-layer portion of this, which you guys will see. Something to score your book with, highly suggest this seam ripper. Something to secure your book, which is going to help us in the scoring process. I'm also going to be using a graph clip. So this is going to help with our pattern to get everything lined up nice. And then lastly, it's not going to quite fit in the frame, but I am going to be using a folding frame in order to hold my book for every step of this process. The last little tool that I'm going to talk about quickly is going to be a combi guide of some sort. And this is just going to help to ensure that our folds for our combi are going to be at a 90-degree angle and just give us something solid to fold up against. Now, just to kind of preface this video, just because I'm using these tools does not mean that you have to. I try to show things in a way that is going to show you the fastest, easiest, most accurate way of doing this type of pattern. If you do not have all of these tools, that is fine. You can still do these type of folds. You just are going to have to adapt to what you do have, okay? And we'll talk about that a little bit as we go here. Alright guys, so the next thing that you're going to need to do once you've gathered all your tools is you're going to need to secure your book to your frame. So I've wrapped the shoelace around the backing board and I've tucked it kind of around these front corners of my book to secure it to my folding frame. Now, I'm not going to go crazy in depth on how exactly I do all of this. If you're new to the channel or you're new to book folding or this type of book folding, the best way to learn all of the tips and tricks about this is to check out my video called How to Get the Perfect 180 Folds. It's going to go super in depth and clear up any questions that you guys may have about this part of the process. But again, I want to do this project from start to finish with you guys, to show you guys kind of how it all comes together as one cohesive project. So again, book secured to my frame, and now we need to choose our scoring guides. So our scoring guides are going to decide the depth at which we score in order to get the desired effect. Personally, for this type of fold, I like my background layer or my deepest layer to show the text or be scored into the text. And I like the outermost or embossed layer that sticks out to not show text. So I'm going to choose, based on my book here, two depths that are going to correspond with that. So what I've done is I will flip to a page of my book, and this is a 2 centimeter scoring guide. So I know that that's going to score into the text of my book, so that's going to be great. And then I'm going to use my multi-guide here for the 1.2 on this deeper part here. I'm going to score against the deeper side to get like a 1.2 centimeter score mark for my outermost layer. So if you look down the channel here, I'm not going to be scoring into the text, which is going to be great. Now, something I do want to point out, again, you could see part of this dagger, right, this page number, sticking into that channel. Now, this is really important if we were doing a plain cut and fold. So if you wanted a crisp, clean background, right, if we were doing a plain cut and fold, you would need to probably choose a different book, because this dagger is going to show as we score up that page. If we were just to fold this page back at 180 degrees, the edge of that dagger is going to show when we go to fold that page back. Now, because we're doing a combi fold, that's not going to come into play too much, because the corner of this is then going to be turned down at a 90-degree angle, more than likely deeper than this is. And because we're scoring 2 centimeters in, we're already quite a bit into that dagger, and then we're going to fold it back from there. So the chances of that dagger showing are going to be very slim. And if they do show, it's going to be okay, because it's going to be in that background layer where the text is going to be showing anyway. So I'm not too worried about that. That's actually why I chose this book, because I know that it's not going to be good for a plain cut and fold, but it's perfect for a combi cut and fold. So I'm going to start back on my page 1 here. I try to skip the first page or so that's attached to the cardstock. Just my preference. I don't tend to use it for folding. So I'm going to start with my deeper depth. I'm going to line up my scoring guide. I'm going to apply a small amount of pressure, and I'm just going to score along the page of my book. Now I'm going to do a few of these pages here. And you can either work all the way through your book, just like I'm doing here with a single size guide, or you can then swap out partway through. So again, with the multi-layer guide, it's going to be the exact same thing. I'm just going to go through. I'm going to choose the depth at which I'm scoring, which in this case is going to be the further one, which is the 1.2. And I'm just going to go through and make my score marks. I prefer typically to score from the outside in. That doesn't always happen, but I just tend to go through and I kind of work in batches. It just seems to work a little bit better for me, but I know a lot of people that prefer to just work through all with the same guide all the way through their book and then start back at page 1 with your next size. So it's totally up to you. I'm going to continue working through this book until it's all scored. Okay, so once you get, I did a little bit more than halfway through, I'm just going to take my book and I'm going to flip it over. And this time I'm going to put the back cover into my frame. And I'm just going to re-secure it the same way. So just take that same shoestring and wrap it around the edge of my book. And take the same two guides, and I'm going to continue the same thing, working from the back of the book down toward where I left off, going in the opposite direction. So once you get to the point where you start seeing score marks from the other direction, you want to make sure that you stop. Scoring them in both directions can sometimes make the score mark pretty thin, and you don't want to accidentally tear through the page. So I've just scored to the point where it meets the next page that has been scored in the other direction, and I'm going to stop here. Okay, so once you have your book all scored and ready to go for your different depths, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to pull out our pattern. Now, there's a couple things that we're going to chat about this pattern itself. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to notice that if you purchase the pattern from me, you're going to have this key here at the bottom. And it's going to have layers 1 through 6. If your pattern happens to have more than 6 layers, obviously feel free to just drop them in, but most of them are going to be 6 or less. So that's going to be our key. This is going to be kind of our cheat sheet. And the reason that it's important to fill this in, and we'll talk about how to fill it in a second, but the reason that it's important to fill this in is because if you happen to step away from your projects, you know, life gets busy, things happen. If you don't have this key to refer back to, yes, you can pull out a ruler. Yes, you can measure your different layers and different things like that. But it's nice to have a quick refresher that takes only a few seconds to fill in now. And when you pick the project back up again, there's no guesswork involved. Everything's here for you. You don't have to remember how you were folding things. You don't have to remember what the situation was. Everything's going to be right here for you. So this is really nice. And I suggest you do this in pencil, especially if you're somebody who reuses your patterns, because once you're done with the project, you can just simply go in and erase it and use the cover sheet again. Okay, so what are we talking about these layers, right? So we're going to look at the preview picture here. And if you're getting the pattern from me, this is essentially what your image is going to look like for your bubble fold. You're going to have kind of this white background. You're going to have this colored outline, and then you're going to have either, black or a different color type of text or word, date, whatever it may be. Now, when we're talking about filling in our key, our layers here, we're going to talk about the most embossed, so the part that sticks out the most from the edge of the page, and work our way to the deepest layer. So if we refer back to kind of that image that I had showed at the beginning, the word itself is what sticks out the most, and then you have kind of this background bubble effect right behind it that has all the text on it. So the black layer is going to be the layer that sticks out the most. So that's going to be our first layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my key and I'm going to write black as my first layer. We're not going to judge my handwriting. The second layer is going to end up being this background, right? So it goes from the text to kind of this pinkish color. Pink, purple, people see things different. I see pink. Now, if you've seen any of my other videos, you're going to say, well, wait a minute. You stress in your other multi-layer videos that you have to remember that there's this white background, right? You have to remember that that counts as a layer. In the case of a multi-layer combi fold, or any combi fold that you're doing, this background layer, this background white, doesn't actually exist. The reason being is because we're actually going to fold directly to that pink. And then we're going to fold the bottom of the page directly up to that pink. So there is going to be no kind of like 180 background layer. There's going to be no flat layer for us to have to deal with. So that white doesn't actually exist. Okay. So we have the black layer and the pink layer, and because it's a combi, there is no white background. So that's it. We just have our black and our pink. Now, if we refer back to the scoring guides that we used, again, we know the black is going to be the part that sticks out the most. So it's going to be our shallowest depth that we scored to, which in my case was 1.2 centimeters. And then the second one is going to be the deeper one, which is our pink here. And for us, our deeper depth was 2 centimeters. And again, the reason that I go and fill this in is because if I have to go back to it at a later time for any reason, I have all that information right here. Okay, so once you filled your key in, you can kind of set this to the side because we're kind of done with it for right now. But it's good to leave within eye shot so you can kind of refer back to it if you need to, especially if this is your first time doing this. The second thing that we're going to do after we have that filled in is one of two things. If you are somebody who is going to physically mark all of your marks with a pencil, and then you're going to go back in with scissors and you're going to cut your pattern, or cut your pieces rather, then you will simply take your pattern pieces just like this, and you're going to fold them in half this way, just like I did with this one. So the hot dog way, right? So we're going to fold it in half like this. If you are somebody who is going to try to do this with a craft knife, which is what I'm going to do, then you are going to want to fold them in half like a hot dog, and you are going to want to cut your pattern piece down. So instead of having your pages like this and then folded in half, you're actually going to slice them down the middle. Okay. Now for this demo today, and again, I've touched on this in other videos, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about this, but I am using the spine in version of this graph pattern. That matters if you are going to be using a graph clip, which I'm going to. And for those that are unfamiliar, you'll see me demo it quick in a minute. But if you are using a graph clip, regardless of how you mark or fold your book, you're going to want the spine in version of the pattern that you're using. If you are not going to be using the graph clip and you're just going to line your pages up manually, then print whatever one is more comfortable for you. If you fold with the spine away from you, print the spine away. If you fold the spine in toward your belly, then that's the one that you'll want to print. Okay. So once you have your pattern either folded or cut, depending on how you want to do this, you're going to take the first page of your pattern. And again, I'm going to use the graph clip. If you are somebody who's not going to use the graph clip, that's fine, but I still strongly suggest that you use some sort of backing board, whether it's a cutting mat, whether it's a piece of cardboard, a piece of cereal box, a piece of plastic, something to put underneath your pattern to give it some sort of rigidity, because it'll make it a lot easier for you to move it around. You can put a little piece of tape on the back or whatever you have to do to kind of hold it in place, but that rigidity is going to make your life so much easier. Okay, so we're going to take our pattern, and I'm simply going to put it into the clip, put my cutting mat down, and then I'm just going to assemble my graph clip. So basically I'm just going to take the topper, and once my pattern is snugly all the way into the graph clip, I'm going to slide the top of the clip into it, make sure that it's still seated in there well, and then just take my binder clip and stick it on there. I tend to center it, but you can do it however. And this goes on the bottom of the page, okay? So top of page, bottom of page, the gap at the bottom of the pattern, just to kind of give you an idea, this gap here is the same gap as this, as long as you're using the same height graph clip as your pattern. In this case, it's a 23 centimeter height pattern. I'm using a 23 centimeter graph clip, and it lines up just like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our pattern and we're going to take our book. Now, this is the most important thing, and I can't stress this enough. Whatever the top of your page is needs to correspond with the top of your book. Again, if you're new to graph patterns, I suggest you watch the intro to graph patterns before attempting this. But I just, again, want to kind of briefly cover some of this stuff. Top of pattern, top of book. Very, very important. You also need to make sure that when you're marking your book, that you're marking on the odd pages. That's how you're going to make sure that your image is going to come out facing in the right direction and it's not going to end up mirroring itself. You need to make sure that the top of your pattern corresponds to the top of your book, not just how it's, but like the actual top of your page. So this is the top of my book, this is the top of my pattern, and that you're marking the odd pages of your book, which is what we're doing here. Okay, so I'm gonna slide my pattern under my first page here. This is actually my page 2. I kind of tucked one up here just to kind of get my hands moving a little bit here. Because we're going to do a 180 fold. So this is a 180 multi-layer combi pattern, right? So the first part of that is a 180. So our very first layer is going to have a 180. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my page and I'm going to fold it back to my shallowest depth. So in my case, that's going to be 1.2 centimeters. I'm then going to take my pattern and I'm going to line it up. This is where the graph clip comes in handy because I don't have to like worry about it being like, you know, situated improperly. It just kind of lines itself up. And I'm going to take my pencil and we're going to mark our pattern. Now, if you are somebody that's going to use a pair of scissors to do this, that's fine. You're going to mark every single place that it changes color. So we're going to mark the bottom of the pink. We're going to mark the top of the pink where the pink meets the black, where the black meets the pink, and then the top of the pink. So we're going to mark all of those spots. So anywhere that it changes color, we're marking both sides of where those colors connect. Okay, so anywhere that it changes color, that's what we're going to put our mark. If you are somebody who is going to use scissors to cut your pattern, you have a couple of choices here. My suggestion is to, if you're new at this, to kind of work, you know, either a couple pages at a time or one page at a time, just until you really get in the groove of this, because you don't want to end up 180ing or folding over every single one of your pages and then trying to go back and fold and cut them, because it's going to be a mess. So I suggest you work 5 to 10 pages at a time at most. But I really, if you're new to this, suggest that you just kind of do one page at a time. So I'm going to demonstrate it in the one page at a time probably, just so people can kind of see what that looks like. And also I'm going to be doing it with a craft knife, so it's even more important that I do it one page at a time. So just for kicks and giggles, I'm going to show you guys kind of how I go about doing this. So either with your scissors or with your craft knife, you're going to take your knife or your scissors and you're going to cut along these areas. This is not my sharp knife. So this is going to be what kind of you're left with. So you're going to have your 2 marks and you're going to cut your outermost layer. So anywhere that's black are going to be the lines that we cut. The pink ones are going to end up being our combi layer. So once you're done cutting all of the black on your pattern, you're then going to fold your next layer. So our next layer, we're going to fold everything but the black back. So here's my black tab. I'm going to leave that one alone. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to fold our combi fold here. So I'm done with this one. Now, if you are somebody who is not going to use a combi guide, that's fine. You're just going to take your page and you're going to fold it up to your 90-degree mark. All I'm going to do with the guide here is I'm going to butt it up against the edge here. Now, your combi marks, your pink marks, are now actually going to be recessed in a little bit. They're going to be here and here along this other fold line. This is helpful for a few reasons. It's going to keep your marks off the edge of the page so you're not going to see them, which is great. The other thing that it's going to do is it's going to allow you to really be able to make that 90 kind of line up instead of it being along the edge of the page and kind of guessing. It's going to give you a little bit deeper of a mark to fold to, which is really nice. So with the combi guide, I'm just going to basically slide this edge along until I reach the point where it lines up with my fold or with my mark. I'm going to bend the page up to it. And if you're somebody who uses a bone folder, that's fine. You can, use your bone folder there. I kind of just take this most times and like run it along, try to not rip the other pages, kind of run it along the tip of it. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. So again, I just line it up. I make my folds. I kind of give it one of these, and then I'll hit it with this if I need to, or if I feel like I need to. And that is going to be your 180 multi-layer combi fold. Okay, so let's do another one. I'm going to kind of talk you guys through a couple of these. So again, when you go to put this back in, bottom of book, top of book. The other thing that I'm going to throw as a tip and trick here is after you get done marking your page, it's important that you put a tick mark on the pattern somewhere so that you know that you've marked that page. The reason that that's important is because your page number may not always line up with your pattern number. Like in my case, my page 1, I did not start on page 1 of my book. So instead of going back and renumbering your entire pattern, if you just put a tick mark after you're done marking that page, it'll save you a lot of time and aggravation later on. Okay, so step 1, 180. We're going to line it up to our next page here. I'm going to go through and I'm just going to mark my pink. Reason being is because I'm using the craft knife method. So I don't need to go in and mark all my black points because I'm actually going to just be cutting them with a craft knife to begin with. Again, if you're somebody who's going to be going back and using a pair of scissors, you'll want to mark everything in between. So I'm going to mark top and bottom, and then I'm just going to put a little tick mark on my pattern. So it may not show up on camera well, but there's basically just a line through. And you can do it however you want. If you're somebody who wants to cross out the number or whatever, that's fine. So again, I'm just going to line this up, make sure that my graph clip is nice and tight at the bottom. And let me see. I was hoping that that light was plugged in. I need a little bit more light. And I'm just going to slice where those black meet the pink. So that's our 180 multi-layer. So we're going to fold back to our next layer, create that next depth. And then I'm going to use this. And I find that the combi guide doesn't really change a whole lot. But I do find that it makes my hand a little less tired. Instead of having to really pull at that page and like readjust it a million times, like, I don't know, I just feel like it works better for my hands. I don't have to press quite as hard. And it saves my fingernail from having to drag my fingernail across it too. All right, so basically we're gonna work through the pattern just like this. I'm gonna work through a little bit in a sped up type of format, and then I will come back once I get to the point where there's like multiple kind of color changes, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so when it comes to multiple cuts, we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to mark If you're somebody who's going to be using scissors to mark all of your cuts, you're going to mark everywhere that it changes color, just like we did on the last one. If you're somebody who's going to use a craft knife, you're going to mark the top and the bottom. So again, the two 90-degree folds. And then we're going to cut everything in between. And this goes again for if you're using scissors as well, because you're going to put a dot on all of these. So I'm going to cut the black here, and then I'm also going to cut where it changes color down here. Now again, if you ever get messed up, when we go to fold the depths of these, just refer back to that key on the cover page. So we know that the black is going to be the part that sticks out the most. So the pink we're going to fold back, the pink we're going to fold back, and we're going to leave the black sticking out. Black sticking out, pink folded back. So we have our 180, then we have our multi-layer, now we're going to fold our combi. And again, so it doesn't matter if there's 12 cuts on one page or just the 2. Anything that's black gets left out. Anything that's pink gets folded to our deeper depth. And that's what your page is going to look like. And if you ever get messed up or you ever feel unsure about something, all you have to do is take your pattern and line it up to the edge of your page. So this line here that it's lined up to is the page, or the line for this page. So I have pink that's folded back, I have black that's sticking out, pink that's folded back, black sticking out, pink that's folded back, and then I have my combi fold on either end. So I'm just going to continue to work through the rest of the book the same way. All right, so my camera cut out, so the time lapse was cut short, so I apologize for that, but you can see what you're going to be left with. And all I did was continue through that same process that I showed you guys. We went through, just to kind of recap, we scored at both depths, and then we went through and we marked our pattern or cut our pattern depending on what that looks like, whether you're using scissors or the X-Acto knife. Made my cuts, made my 90-degree folds for my combi, and lined everything up to the pattern to make sure that everything was getting folded in the proper direction. So in this case, our black layer is the embossed layer. That's the part that's going to stick out. And then our pink layer was the layer that was folded backward to the deeper depth and then folded at our 90s for our combi. So it doesn't matter what word you're doing or what design you're doing, but this is going to be kind of what you're left with. So this will be my finished product once everything's all set and glued down. Again, I have the black cover that was in really good shape. We added the cardstock to the back, a little bit of dried hot glue, just to cover up that name. We have our color matched gift tag that they can then kind of tuck through the pages once they filled it out, and they can gift it to whomever they're gifting it to. Now, just to kind of recap, again, this is known as the bubble effect, but if you're looking for what specifically it is a 180 multi-layer combi fold. So we're taking all of those different things and implementing them together as one cohesive fold. Again, 180 multi-layer combi fold. All of the tools and the pattern that I used in today's video, along with some other patterns that are similar, can be found in the description box below. And I think that's it. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to reach out within the Facebook group. They're a great group of helpful ladies and gentlemen that can answer just about anything. I do my best to also go through and answer comments here, but for real-time answers, the best place is the Facebook group. Hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you in the next one.